What is up, you beautiful humans? I'm here today to try to help you make a purchasing decision for your Sony a6400, whether you are considering this camera or you already have it. And a very underrated lens. I don't know that it's actually underrated. It's actually a pretty popular lens, but something that you may have been thinking about, considered, or you haven't considered is the Sony 18-105, which does have that optical steady shot built right into the lens that's going to help you with that stabilization on the a6400. Now, many of you may have started with the kit lens, the 16-50 that you got for an extra $100 with the a6400. And honestly, I give this lens a lot of guff, but for an extra $100, it's not a bad deal. However, this was the first lens purchase that I made when I purchased my Sony a6500, and I'm not regretting it. So if there's one lens that I am going to have in my bag, it's this one. So guess what? Challenge accepted. We're going to take this thing out. We're going to put it through the test. It's pretty empty in there. Field trip! So I should probably clarify the challenge in this little field trip. So this is self-imposed. It's just me trying to put the lens and the camera through its paces and give you my perspective on why you would want this lens, what you would use it for, because the lens isn't for everybody. It's not for everybody, but it is for quite a few of you, and that's what I want to kind of give you a rundown on why I think this is a good purchase as far as the next purchase once you get the a6400. Now, I was shooting with the Sigma 16mm in the studio, and I love that lens, and for locked off shots, for gimbal shots, to remain wide, but it's a prime lens, and so yes, it's a great vlogging lens, but the zoom is going to offer you a lot. So let's get into it. So probably one of the biggest benefits when you pair it up with the a6400 is the obvious OSS, or the optical steady shot, because the a6400 lacks the IBIS, and so being a vlogger, if you are doing a lot of handheld shots like I'm doing right now, this is going to offer you some benefit to stabilize those shots. And I've tested this lens quite a bit on the a6400, and I've got those videos up, but what I want to tell you is that if you are doing primarily handheld shots, you're vlogging, then this could be a good lens to start with. And so let's actually break that down. Let's unpack this a little bit more and add some more benefits to the vlogging aspects. So with it being wide at 18, it allows me to obviously do this handheld. I'm of average size, and I'm not using my GorillaPod, which would extend that out a little bit more. I'm using a smaller tripod, and so you're not up my nose, and we're actually able to have a decent conversation with each other here. Well, actually, I'm just talking to the camera, really. I mean, I do talk to you in the comments, but the point is that we can go wide enough at 18. 16, would that be better? Sure, because when we throw in the crop factor, we're really pushing. 16 would be 24, 18 would be around 27. So we're still in a little tighter than maybe most would appreciate, but honestly, it works for me. Now, of course, the benefit of being able to zoom in at 105, because yes, the Sigma 16 being a prime lens, it's going to stay wide, and anytime you need to punch in on something, well, you actually have to move. So this allows you, going in at 105 will allow you to get some of that buttery B-roll and some other shots to accentuate your vlog or your video of what you're doing, so that you can essentially get those shots and not have to be on top of them every time. You can be punched in from a distance. Now, for those of you that like a power zoom option, For me, personally, I actually like more of a manual zoom in and zoom out, and of course the focus ring as well on the lens. But if you want that power zoom option, which I tend to use when I'm on a gimbal, so if you're looking for it, it's there. We should probably talk about the elephant in the room, and that of course is the aperture. Nope, this is not a 1.4, 1.8, 2.8 lens. It's an f4 aperture. It's an f4 throughout though, so throughout the zoom, it's not variable. So for those of you who are real beginners, when you see those numbers like 3.5 to 5.6, that just means that it closes down as you're zooming telephoto, as you're punching in. So just keep that in mind. Let's talk about that f4 for a moment, like what that means, because you should be checking the boxes of how you're going to be using this lens, where you're going to be using it. And no, you're not going to be using this lens to see the stars, unless you're actually hanging out on YouTube. The Sony cameras are quite capable in low light, and yes, even the APS-C line, the a6400 specifically. And one of the things that you really just need to focus on is experimentation and how you're going to work with the ISO, work with the shutter speed, work with your aperture, work with what this camera can do, maximizing its full potential, getting creative with lighting. How are you going to bounce light? How are you going to find light? And think about that as a filmmaker. You can really push the limits and still make the work that you're doing productive with these cameras and this lens. Alright, so back from the field trip here, so let's get a recap on this 18-105, and I fall in love with this lens each and every time that I work with it. So let me, for full transparency, let's talk about a couple of things here, because again, we're talking about OSS for the a6400, what benefits it offers there. It's very well built. It is a very nicely built lens with a little bit of heft, yes, but it feels like this is a lens that's going to last. Well, it has. I mean, I've had it for a couple of years now, and I do use it quite a bit professionally and personally. But that nighttime footage, and like I said, I'm about sharing my, being fully transparent and honest here, regardless of the f4 and the shutter speed and the ISO and your exposure. Sometimes you're going to run into situations where your lighting is just gross. And so I had sections of that footage where it was pretty gross. I wanted to include some of that in there so that you could see it in some other lighting situations. I did not actually bring my own lights. I was just working with the light that was there. I will, however, be taking you out on another field trip where we bring some portable lights with us, lights that actually can fit in your pocket, and you take them out and you can get into some pretty crazy situations. So stay tuned for that one, because I will get you out there and we're going to be working with some nighttime photography and filmmaking. But what I will say is, going back to this, always thinking about your shooting situations. How are you going to be using this lens? What is your workflow need? What do you need, whether it's professional or personally? But with the 18-105 and the f4 throughout the zoom, and again, loving that zoom with the fact that nothing is shifting here, especially when I'm working with the gimbal. There's no barrel that comes out, no change. Everything is internal when you're zooming. But just giving it its due credit that at an f4, you can still get some usable footage, and some of the areas were fairly soft and there was definitely some noise in there, but I felt like it could be usable footage depending on your situation. But always ask yourself, what are my needs? And get the gear that fits your needs. And the 18-105, it could fit the majority of your needs. I always recommend having this in your bag, and it is always in my bag. If you have any specific questions or concerns, please feel free to hit me up. As always, you know that I'm involved in the comments section, so get down in there and let's have a conversation. Go out there and do those things that matter. Keep rocking those faces. Do those things that you do so that you can elevate everything that you're doing in your life. I will have more content coming to you on this channel to help you with your creative endeavors. So until then, go, do, rock, and all the things. Let's go, and I'll see you right back here